We did an entire show where we led with a New York Post story yesterday. Just not.
That's right. It was a different New York Post story. It was the guy dressed as a gorilla.
Maybe they're concerned about that. They didn't get into detail. But
2 o'clock, a guy dressed in a gorilla costume ended up getting arrested for walking into the wrong house.
Let me check my notes like David Sampson did, because this could just be about the gorilla costume thing. But I digress. So I relay that message to you. You tell me the exact opposite is going to happen. And I'm like, how? Because, like, I have bosses, but you also have bosses, and I've
No, but I'll tell you. I'll tell you how this is going to happen. The ESPN's not telling us what to talk about. Like that. That's never been the case around here.
Might I suggest you talk? Sure, you are the rebel with a cause, and I appreciate that. Can you, like, not talk about all of it? Or
okay, well, I think a lot of the audience wouldn't even know what I'm talking about here, right? Because it was a weird story in the middle of a pandemic.
I think our audience knows. Go ahead, Stu.
Can they not tell you what to talk about? I'm perfectly fine with them telling me what to talk about. I mean, I'm good with it.
Yes, that's fine. But no, I just don't understand. Like, that's never been the thing around here. Anybody who's followed us at ESPN knows that I negotiate freedom, not money, that I negotiate the ability as a child of exiles to talk about the things that I want to talk about. And so the idea that there would be a newspaper story and any executive would have any issue with me commenting on a newspaper story about us when I'm in the radio content business, like, I'm not really going to ignore that one when the story is not flattering to us, when ESPN has fired an employee for talking to the media about stuff, and then you get this weird story in the New York Post during a pandemic talking about whether we're going to be here anymore when we've got 2.5 years of an expensive contract that we're tied into, that makes it kind of ridiculous, the whole story. And so to not talk about it, it's one of the objections I've always had. You know, ESPN doesn't like to cover itself the way that it covers others, but hell, if you're going to do that to me, like, I'm a journalist. They wrote a story about us. I called some people. They said it's not true. They said it's false. It's a false story. And so, like, but since when? You think because there's a pandemic that this culture around us wait, let me backtrack for a second. So, we've always fought with parts of the machine at ESPN. There's a culture, like a subculture of people who have argued against us having an animal guide. Let's make it an executive. One executive.
I would just, can we name the executive sports?
Yes.
All right, sports.
It can't be said like that. It's got to be sports.
Sports.
Sports. Sports. And so every edict, what do you want to talk about? Sports.
Sports.
Yes.
Sports. That's always what we're fighting against. Sports.
It's Groot. All it says is sports and more sports. More sports. Sports. And so I like to talk about journalism and race and other things because, Scott, one of the things that's interesting that I'm watching during this documentary is Wilbon and Kornheiser can't shut up because back when they cared about sports, this is the story we're talking about now. Like when they really cared about sports, when they were writing about sports instead of gasbagging about it. Like you could sit Kornheiser and Wilbon down and they will give you 19 hours on Isaiah Thomas because they are right now in their element. Much like them, I too have gotten to a different place in terms of how I care about sports. I got married. My life is very different. This has to be fun or there's no real reason to do it if it's not fun. But if you're going to come at me during a pandemic with sports, more sports, like get out of here. Like for real, get out of here. What are you talking about? More sports when there are no sports? More sports? More sports?
I think you're burying the lead in that New York Post story. Greeny might be coming back to radio.
I mean, come on. Just talk about, can we not do this? Number one, I know that's not an option, but can you just stick to your name and no one else's?
My name wasn't in it.
Sports!